Alright, so today we're going to talk about finding the average rate of change from a graph. So, what we're going to see here today is we're going to have a graph of some kind of line, like either a quadratic or parabola, or an exponential, or even just these linear equations, these linear lines. Okay? So when we talk about average rate of change, that's basically just the change between 2 points. And we often call this the slope, right? The slope of a line. Okay? Now when we look at these problems, it's going to give us these crazy looking equations. We don't have to do anything with the equations, at least today we don't. That's coming later. Basically, all we need from the top there is just these two numbers. And what this is the interval that it wants us to find the rate of change between. And this is interval notation. If you guys remember from absolute values, remember that's the least number, that's the greatest number in the interval. And when it gives us a interval, it's just talking about the x values. So it gives us an interval on the x-axis, and it wants us to figure out what happened to the slope during that interval. So let me do an example here to show you what I'm talking about. So it gives me the interval 1 and 2 on the x-axis. So the least number is 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 1 on the x-axis and then go up to my line, and I'm just going to put a dot right there at 1 on the x-axis. So that's where my line is when the x value is 1. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Should I zoom in here a little bit? Let's zoom in here a little bit. I'm going to zoom in here a lot of bits because these graphs are kind of small. Okay. Yeah, that's better. So that's at 1, right? Now let's look at 2. So 2 is right here, so I'm going to go up to my line when it's at 2, and it's hitting right there. So I put a dot right there. So basically it wants me to find the slope between those 2 points. And again, to find the slope from a graph, it's pretty easy. It's just the rise over the run. So I figure out how much I went up. I went up 1, 2, 3, 4. I went over 1. So my slope would just be 4, or 4 over 1, however you wanted to write that. And that would be your answer. That's it. Okay? Let's look at another one. Let's look down here at this one. So this one gives me the interval 0 and 2. So I want to find the change, or the slope, between 0 and 2. So I'm going to go to 0 on the x-axis, which is just the y-axis, right? And go down to my line, and I'm going to put a point right there. Okay, and then I'm going to go to 2, go up to my line, and I'm going to put a point right there. Okay, and then I'm going to figure out my rise and my run. So I went up 1, 2, 3, I went over 2. My slope would be 3 over 2. And that's my answer. Okay, let's look at another one. So let's look at this one. This one is a linear equation. And it wants me to figure out between 0 and 7. Oh boy. So I'm going to go to 0, put a point. Then I'm going to go over to 7, put a point. It's just right there on the x-axis. And I'm going to count how much I went up and how much I went over. So it looks like I went up 1, 2, 3, 4. And I went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The slope would be 4 over 7. Okay, not too tough. Now, with linear equations, so these are our diagonal lines and stuff, there's a nice little trick you can do. I said we didn't have to do anything with the equations, and we don't, but remember, linear equations always have the slope right there next to the x, right? So if it's a diagonal line, I can just look at the equation and just get the slope right there. It's that easy. Okay? All right. Let's look at another one. Let's look over here at number 11 on here. So number 11, it wants me to find, the rate of change between -1 and 1. So I'm going to go over to -1, up to my line, put a point. Go over to 1, go up to my line, put a point. And it wants me to find the rate of change between those 2 points. Well, what type of line is that? That is a horizontal line, right? We think of Slope Dude. What does he say? He says that is zero fun because that slope is 0. The rise is going up nada. Okay, there's no rise, which would be 0. It's going over 2, but 0 divided by 2. If I have nothing and I divide nothing by 2, I still have nothing, right? So the slope of this one is just 0. And that is my answer. And that is all you are doing today.